I will back up. Oh, perfect.
I got it.
Thank you, Cliff. So I'll start over with the demonstration then, because now we're recording. So for browser local storage, to keep the login credentials relevant upon refresh, we're going to access browser local storage and create a key value pair system to store the authentication credentials throughout the system. I have this running in the home page because after you log in, when the credentials are updated, my system automatically navigates back to home to count this in. If I did it in login, it wouldn't exactly work because the state hasn't updated by the time the login request comes back. I tried implementing that and it didn't work. So it might need some retooling to do that. But once we navigate to home, the system checks to see if inside of our auth object, the token is not null, meaning that if it's not null, we have a token. So we then have to check to see if the local storage element token is undefined, meaning that we don't have any elements in local storage. If we don't, then we need to set those items. So you can set just one key with all the values of auth. I modeled mine after the way that Facebook does it, where they treat their entire local storage element as a JavaScript object, and each of the keys contains one separate value. You don't have to do that. I made mine look nice and clean though, because I wanted to. So you use local storage, which is an inbuilt JavaScript term to access local storage. You don't have to import that or anything. And the set item command will set your key value pairs in local storage. The first argument is the name of the key, and the second one is the value. But we have to JSON.stringify all the values because local storage only saves string data. That means that when we want to retrieve them later on, we have to do a JSON.parse to return that from string data to actual code elements. So to set your keys, if the token is undefined, we just use the set item. Now, if the token is defined, and we've come back here, we want to remove, there's a chance that a different user's logged in. So we remove the items. So we just clear the object at this point. We look for the key and we remove it from local storage. Then we reset them with the new information. Now, if we come back here and local storage.token is not undefined, we're going to set auth with the new credentials from the local storage. This is the refresh element kicking in. So if there's something in local storage, when we refresh, but auth is undefined, this sets auth with the contents of local storage. And the only other element to this is in logout, where upon logout, we reset the state of auth to the default state, and we remove all of the elements from local storage. And then it just navigates right back to home. So it looks like a lot. It is a lot, but it fortunately functions.
Very cool. I do want to let you know some ways you can improve this, because you did say that it's kind of gross and you maybe would want some ways to improve it. So I can give you some advice on how to improve it.
Sure. Go.
So right now, though, I want to do a quick check on something. Can you go back to your website for a second?
Sure.
Can we go to CR records?
Sure.
And can you refresh here?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to do. Yep, that does log me out.
Yeah. So because your use effect is in the home screen, it's only ever going to load your existing item if you refresh or go to the home first. So that's where one of the downsides of having your localhost loader in the home component is considered an ineffective way of doing it. I'll tell you how to fix that in a second, but let's go back to your first year code on the home screen now. Sure. Log out, perfect. No improvements there. That works great. So here, first thing I'm noticing is that in both scenarios of the if statement here, you're doing the set item, the exact same set item.
Aha. So
So first things first is you would change this to if local storage token is not equal to undefined, do this, and then outside the if statement, do your local storage. So this would come here. This entire section would be gone, and only this would be inside of an if.
okay. So
That's your
let
first
me-
change you can do.
Okay. Let me make sure I get that right before we move
Yeah.
on too far. So I'm just
take
going
that stuff there, those three
Yep.
lines, those 4 lines technically,
it's
those
yeah,
outside of the if statement.
these outside of here. So just drop them here.
Yep, right there.
Yep.
Delete the else. Line 15, yep. The whole thing.
Yep.
And then
Okay.
turn the conditional to a not equal. And then remove lines 19 through 22.
19 through 22.
Yep.
Yeah.
You need it no matter, regardless of the local storage content, you always want it to do this local storage stuff here. You always want it to do this regardless of the status of this item. What the difference is depending on the status, whether or not you want to delete what's there already or not. That makes sense?
Right. Yes. There was a lot of redundancy there.
Yes. So just fix the indentation on 22, 23, and 24, and you'll be good to go.
Very cool.
Where you can highlight multiple lines and do shift tab to indent multiple lines.
That's right.
So, all good though. So that's there for now. The other thing though is this entire use effect should be moved to your
Auth provider.
auth provider. And what you can also do there is instead of having it when you need to set stuff. So with this, you can add another function to your auth context called save save auth or local save auth is what I would call it. So if you go to the auth provider for a quick second.
Where are you? Nope. That's the
Providers.
app router.
Auth
Providers.
dropper.
Yeah,
Right
there
there.
we are.
So in here, you can create a function and provide another item here. So for example, what I'm saying is in this create context, put a comma after this function. So this empty function there inside the parentheses, inside the array,
Okay.
do a comma and then do another empty function.
Oh, geez.
Oh, it's
Okay.
this thing right here. This is an empty function.
Oh, empty. Yes, yes, yes.
Yep. Again, is
Got
that
it.
necessary? No,
Okay.
it's just a way of telling people what to expect. Don't forget the arrow and curly bracket.
Right. Empty anonymous function. Got it.
Yep, empty anonymous function. That's just telling people that one item's an object, the second item's a function, and the third item in the array is also a function. The third item can be a function called save auth, and that's where you can do all your local storage, where you're going to save all sorts of auth stuff, and you can accept an auth object. And then you can
Okay.
do all your setters there. And that way you can call it wherever you do it. So in the login function, when someone logs in, you can, after doing set off, you can also do save auth and then save it to local storage via the
Okay.
function call. Does that make sense?
Somewhat. I don't see how I can. I don't exactly see how I'm putting things in here yet.
You're not
but-
yet. So here, let's just put a function. Let's just do const. That's const.
My
Const
the
save
table's
off
not angled right.
equals, and I'll just call it like in here, maybe just call this new auth.
Okay.
And then in here, we're just for the moment just going to return. We're not going to do anything yet. But then above it, I want you to add a comment. So one line above, do a comment. To do, colon. And always put a space before the T. Always have a space between your brackets because there are extensions and other editors will recognize that to do if you do it like that. If you do comment space to do colon, some editors will actually recognize that and actually add it to your system. I know IntelliJ does it. So there is an extension for Visual Studio Code 2 to add that. I actually have it on mine. But in this one, then you can just say update local storage here. And the last thing you can do is you're going to provide this function inside here. So auth, set auth, comma, save auth.
Ooh.
And so you can provide multiple items through the system. You don't have to just do just your state stuff. You can provide whatever you want. You can also don't have to do this as an array. This doesn't have to be an array. This can be an object of items, object of auth, set auth, and save auth. So you can do multiple different things with your context. So you can provide multiple different things down the line. And so now in login can import this save auth function and call it after it runs set auth first, and then it can run save auth, which will update the local storage. The last thing we can do here is we're going to add that the use effect of loading local storage that goes here as well. So one line down on 16. Let's
Oh,
do
oops,
comment.
sorry.
Not yet. Yeah, right here. Do line down
Uh-huh.
and do another comment to do.
Oops. Mm-hmm.
Move local storage check here. And so this will be a use effect
Okay.
with no dependencies. What happens is that this use effect should only run once when the person first visits the site, right?
Mhm.
To see if they have data stored in their local storage. The problem with where you have it now is every time the user visits the home, it's going to check to see if they're logged in. If it is, it's going to rewrite the exact same data to the system.
Right.
So here, when the person first goes to your site, regardless of the web page, because this auth provider is above the router, no matter what page you're on, it's always going to load this component into memory, and it will run this use effect one time to check, hey, by the way, now I know you're on the view our records page, but let me load up your local storage and see if you're logged in. Oh, you are. I'll load the auth now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So yeah, if you go back to your website for a quick second.
Oh, website. Got it. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to see our records. Let's go ahead and do the inspect, or bring up the dev tools, how you want to do it, and load up the components from React thing. Yeah. And see above, scroll up a little bit on this. There's your auth provider right there, right?
Aha.
It's up here. So no matter what page you load within the router, the auth provider is going to get loaded to the system. And so the use effect will be triggered. Where in the home system, if you refresh and you're not on home, it doesn't get reloaded. So ready, reload again.
And it's going to boot me
We're
right
gonna,
out.
yeah, you're not going to be in. And if you look through here, the home component isn't anywhere here, is it?
Oh, no, it's not.
So the home component's use effect isn't going to trigger.
But
However, auth provider
will.
is, and so its use effect will trigger. As soon as you go back home now, since the home component will now be loaded,
it loads.
its use effect
right
triggers. Yep. Now its use effect will actually trigger.
So theoretically, I mean, I know it makes sense to put it in auth provider, but theoretically, we could also put it in navbar because that comes down to, or even app router because that's also there. It makes sense to put it
yes.
in. Yeah, it makes sense to put it in auth provider because that's what it's
Right.
doing. But
and
it's
if
almost
you're looking
functionally
for it,
identical.
Yeah. And
yes.
if someone other than you is to look for it, where are they going to go? Assume it's going to be most likely.
It's going to be in auth, but it will function the same way because of this cascading layered effect.
Exactly. Yep.
Very cool.
100%.
Okay.
So those are the ways you can improve this.
Nice.
Overall, great job getting it working.
Thank you.
Any questions on that? Very cool stuff. Great work on that.
That was great. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, no
we're
worries.
trying on my apps.
Yeah, if anyone needs any help with it, let me know. I'll try not to break your system. You can probably stop recording, Cliff.